All right, welcome back. So this is gonna be kind of a different type of video, but we're gonna continue to do it. So we're gonna start trying to do 2 videos per week for you guys. So our normal load data video on Fridays, and then another video, and it's most likely gonna be subsonic stuff. We've started toying around with this, and it's a lot of fun to play with, especially we do understand suppressors are getting easier to get, and so more and more people are shooting suppressors. So that's why I want to start kind of making some subsonic stuff for you guys today. So today, the first one's going to be the 4570 405 grain. This is the coated black one, so these are the 459 diameters. We're new Starline brass on these guys with CCI primers, and our case overall length is 2.520. So that's kind of our baseline for our components and each different part of the load. So now I'm going to talk about the powders. So there's kind of 2 sides of the powders, or at least one side is very fast burning, and then the other side is a little bit slower burning, like you'd see in your standard rifle stuff. Then there's one in the middle. So the first one is Titegroup. Now this is a powder that you're going to see in pistol cartridges usually. It's very fast, and the way that I was explaining this is if you have higher pressures with a faster burning powder in the chamber, you'll have lower pressures at the muzzle. So the Titegroup may sound quieter at the muzzle than, for example, like the IMR 3031. That's the way that I was explained to it, and it does make sense when you think about it like that. So I did some work on the backside of all this, taking these powders, loading them, and getting my right velocities, and then now I got some baselines, and we're going to go through these baselines with you today. So with the Titegroup, we're at 10.5 grains of powder, and we should be right around 1,000 feet per second. Like I said, that powder is a lot faster burning, so if you're going to load that one, just make sure you're looking at your pressures. This is probably not a really good option for you, like a trapdoor stuff. More modern guns, and just because it's going to be higher pressure in the chamber. So the next one is the Accurate 5744. Now this guy is a little bit more in the middle for burn rate. So I do have our burn rate chart over here, and I believe the Accurate 5744 is number 71 on the chart, compared to the Titegroup is number 17. So this is quite a bit slower burning. So we're going to continue to spread that pressure out from the chamber all the way to the end of the muzzle while the bullet is traveling through the barrel. So we might have a little bit higher pressure at the muzzle on this one, but lower pressure in the chamber. So that might sound a little bit louder, to the ear than the Titegroup would. So, but this one we're at 20.5 grains of powder, and we should be right around 1,050 feet per second. And also, when I was talking to a gentleman that does a lot of subsonic stuff, he said I actually should be a little bit slower. So I think when I go to redo these, I might actually try to hit right around like the 950 feet per second, just because of ambient temperature being a play in that, where if I'm loading them here in Wisconsin at, let's say, 950 feet per second, or 1,050 feet per second, somewhere where it's hotter or maybe colder, those velocities may be going supersonic into that 1,100 feet per second. So I'd like to actually maybe download these just a little bit more into like the 950 feet per second, but we're going to go with what we got here today. And then the next powder is the IMR 4198. So this is obviously like a really common rifle powder. So this is a lot slower burning, even more so than the 5744. The IMR 4198 is number 79 on the chart. So at 24.8 grains of powder for this guy, and we're going to be right at that 1,050 feet per second again. So like I said, the same thing with the 5744, lower pressures in the chamber and a little bit higher pressures at the end of the muzzle, because that powder continues to burn throughout basically the whole barrel. Then the next powder is the IMR 3031. So honestly, I've never really loaded this powder a whole lot, so I'm curious to see how it does. We're at 30.5 grains of powder, and this one is a little bit hotter, so I think this one was where you would see the ambient temperature play a little bit more of a factor into this, because we're at 1,070 feet per second. And now this is the slowest burning powder out of all of them. On the burn rate chart, we are at 88. So we're definitely in a learning process here, a little bit of a learning curve from us, but we're excited to get into it. So now we're going to take all these out on the range, and we'll shoot them up. We're shooting them through a Henry single shot, non-suppressed for right now. When we are working these loads up, we don't want to shoot them through a suppressor. Make sure they're stabilizing and they're safe to shoot before we put our can on it. So that rifle will not be suppressed. So we'll meet you guys on the range there, and we're gonna shoot these over the chronograph, and we'll go from there. Alrighty, so we got all of our loads out of the reloading room and we're out on the range now. So what we're gonna do here is we have 10 loads of each one and we're gonna shoot these over the chronograph. Make sure that they're still staying subsonic like I had mentioned before. That I think honestly if I'm gonna do this again, I wanna be actually a little bit slower than like 1050. I'd like to be even maybe at like 950 feet per second just to make sure on like a hot day like today that these loads aren't going supersonic. Because like I said, our main thing that we're trying to do with these guys is make accurate subsonic loads. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take 10 of each one, shoot them down at the target. So we'll also be testing accuracy with this, as well with checking the velocities on these. So I'm gonna go through and shoot all these, and then once I collect all that data, I'll meet you guys back into Shotgun Willie's and we'll talk about it all there. Alrighty guys, so it's time to talk about now the 4570 stuff, the subsonic. So we just got done shooting all those and now I took all that data, and honestly I think I like just making these charts for you guys, but I also, if I can make them better, if there's some tweaks that you guys would like to see, something that you would like to change about them, comment that so that way I can get your guys' feedback. I appreciate it a lot when I get your guys' feedback, so that way I know if I'm doing something you guys like or if I'm doing something you guys don't like. So here's this one for the 4570. So this is for the 405 grain, and this is going to be more specifically for a subsonic load. So I took 4 different powders and I loaded those ones to a subsonic load. So there's kind of a lot going on here in this graph, and I'm going to explain that to you. So obviously we have our total title on the top, and that's for our caliber and our bullet and obviously subsonic. Then we have our powders, so the IMR 3031, IMR 4198, the accurate 5744, and then the Hodgdon Titegroup. So those are our powder selections. Right below it, those numbers are our powder charges. So obviously these are subsonic loads, so we're just trying to hit one specific speed. So I don't have tons of different charges. So let's start with the IMR 3031. So at 30.5 grains, those are all of our velocities underneath it. So we start at 1078, and like for example, our fastest one was 1113. So you can see a couple are highlighted yellow, a couple are highlighted green, and one is highlighted red. So the speed of sound does vary at where you are in the world according to altitude, temperature outside, the humidity. So the speed of sound is always varying. But let's just use, for example, the speed of sound at sea level at 68 degrees Fahrenheit should be right around 1,128 feet per second. So 1,128 feet per second. So I'd have that written down here. So the reason why those are highlighted here is, so if they're highlighted yellow, they're within 50 feet per second of the speed of sound. Now, if they're highlighted red, in my opinion, they're too fast. That's too close to the speed of sound. Now, if they're green, they're below 50 feet per second of the speed of sound at that specific sea level, temperature, and all of those conditions. So that may change depending on where you are located at for loading this. So those are the different color coordinations there on that chart. So then that one is the neat thing about the IMR 3031, and this is more of a rifle powder. I guess the three of them are rifle powders, but you can see the SDs are a little bit bigger, so 19.4 feet per second on that powder there. These all sounded really good. We weren't shooting these through a suppressor yet. We were shooting through these one. This is just a Henry single shot, 4570 break action, but they definitely are soft shooting. They're a little bit quieter to begin with. There's not that big old bang to them just because they're a little bit quieter. So the next powder is the IMR 4198. So now this one had another one that was just a little too quick for my liking, like pushing up on that speed of sound too close. And then we had a few other yellow ones than the IMR 3031. So this one may on average just be a little bit hotter. I guess our average speed for the IMR 4198 is 1,080 feet per second. For the 3031, we're at 1,066 feet per second. So back to the IMR 4198. This is at 24.8 grains of powder. This one had a little bit smaller SD though than the 3031, 18.5 feet per second. So the long story short is, like I said, I think I would want to load these down a little bit more. I think I'd want to be a little bit slower, so that way we are staying well away from the speed of sound, just because it always depends on temperatures and altitudes and all those things as well. Now the 5744, so at 20.5 grains of powder, we are at on an average of 1,076 feet per second. Now this one didn't have any that were above 1,100 feet per second for velocities. It had a few that were within 50 feet per second of the 1128 feet per second, the speed of sound. So we're slowing down a little bit. We're getting a little bit better here, but still not perfect. Like I said, this is my first subsonic video, so just bear with us, and hopefully we'll be better on the next one, having a little bit better understanding. This also reminds me of another thing to talk about. So on like the IMR 3031, the 4198, and even the 5744 from Accurate, if we are playing with that little margin of error for the velocities to be at the speed of sound, the bullet may not be supersonic, but the air molecules around the bullet may be, and that will create the crack of a gunshot. That will create that supersonic crack to it. So that's something to consider when doing this, and that's why I would like to be a little bit slower than at least, I mean, I'd like to be at least 100 feet per second away. Honestly, those would be the better ideal than the speed of sound. So that's something to just consider. I didn't really ever think about that until a gentleman had told me about it. So now the Titegroup at 10.5 grains. So quite a big difference in charges there, even from like the extreme side, which is the 3031 at 30.5 grains, all the way down to 10.5 grains. We're talking 20 grain difference in charge. That's, in my opinion, a pretty big charge difference there. So it's kind of interesting to see, but the neat thing about the Hodgdon Titegroup is none of them were too fast. They were all really good speeds. Our average was 1,055 feet per second, which is like a really good speed. I like that speed in my temperatures, in my conditions. Now, if you were gonna say you're somewhere else, that might be a little bit quick for you, or that might be a little bit too slow for you, depending on your ambient temperature and your altitude and those things. And like I kind of talk a lot about those, but those do have a big factor in playing this, especially when we're this close to the speed of sound. Another cool thing to look at is that our SD is extremely small. And before I had shot these, I would have thought that the SDs on the faster burning, lower charge powders would have been higher, just because you wouldn't have gotten a great consistent burn in the case because you had such little powder in there. But that obviously seems to not be the case. The faster burning powder has a lower SD. I mean, that's pretty obvious there. But just because our 3031 is our slowest burning powder and our Titegroup is our fastest burning powder, and then, you know, from there, from left to right on the chart, our SDs obviously get smaller. But yeah, this is kind of what we wanted to do for you guys. These things shot really good too. I mean, this is the 4198. That's a 10-shot group there. That one's really awesome. All of them are really good. Like even the Titegroup was really good too. That's another 10-shot group, and they're at about 40 yards. So I guess it's not the most distance. It's not like I'm shooting 100-some plus yards, but it's a subsonic load. It's nothing that we're looking to shoot really far. Now the next test that I really want to do is I want to take these exact same loads and put them on a gun that has a can and see how they sound. So I think that might be the next kind of type of video that's going to come off, be a little bit of a spin-off from this one. But we appreciate you guys watching the videos. Go like and subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment. We will definitely comment back and try to help you out as best as we can. Thanks very much. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Have a good rest of your day.